The Dreame W10 is a combination robot vacuum and mop, very similar to the Narwhal T10, except better. Like the Narwhal, it has a dustbin that you have to empty yourself. Unlike the Narwhal, it can both vacuum and mop at the same time. The mopping pads are spring-loaded for a little bit of downward pressure and are easily removable in case you wanted to run this in a vacuum-only mode.
Mop pads installed.
Now, I was very excited about the W10. I was actually going to buy one for myself. I couldn't decide between it and the T10 because I wanted this as a dedicated mop. I have the Dreame Z10 Pro cleaning my house every night. It's currently my favorite robot vacuum. And I wanted something to follow up after it and mop the floor. Now, what made me hesitate about the W10 is because it is a combination robot vacuum and mop, I didn't want to have to empty the dustbin every day, which on a Narwhal you don't have to do if it's just mopping because it doesn't vacuum. And the other thing was I was concerned about wet spills. If the vacuum, even if you can turn it off, passes over them, then, you know, what if those parts get dirty? And all of that was addressed in this review. But before we get into any of that, let's take a closer look. So like the Narwhal, this has a separate dirty and clean water tank. Unlike the Narwhal, you can actually tip it over without it spilling, just not towards the back. If you recall from my Narwhal review, I had a problem where I put it under something, so I had to tip the containers to get them open, and that spilled water everywhere, so I had to move it. This one wouldn't have that problem. So one of the only things you have to do to this if you want to keep it running is you just have to empty the dirty water and put in the clean water. If you turn the vacuum off, which you can do, that's pretty much the only maintenance you have to do, except occasionally clean the inside of the bin. Now, this water container, the freshwater container, there's two ways to fill it. This little convenient thing is what I usually use, but if that doesn't work for you, the whole lid pops open. And that's pretty much it. Don't fill it past the max line, like I did, although it will not leak because it has that rubber gasket there. And this one you can tip in either direction because it doesn't have a hole in the back of it. So this is about as close as I could get you to the cleaning process. One of the things I like about this as compared to, say, the upcoming Roborock S7 Max V is that there are no moving parts except for the water pumps in the actual base station. The robot spins its own brushes, and that's what does the cleaning. And this part is removable for cleaning, which I don't know how often you have to do it. I do it maybe every couple of weeks. I don't really see any problems with it. I don't really have much hair getting stuck in there. But I guess better safe than sorry. So like the Narwhal, it's got a touch screen.
Start cleaning mop pads.
I don't really use it for anything, although I do use the display to see what it's doing, which is very handy. I like that a lot.
Charging.
The dustbin is a good size. One of the things I learned while running this after my Z10 as a dedicated mop is that because the Z10 does such a good job cleaning, this really doesn't pick up very much dirt. Although this is a better floor cleaner than the Z10, strangely enough, which I'll show you later. I was a little bit concerned with the fraying of the mop pads. This is what it looked like after a couple of days, and I thought, you know, what will it look like in a month? Well, this is what it looks like in a month. Here's a little spring-loaded thing. So like I said, I was a bit concerned, but you know, after running it for a month, it hasn't gotten worse, so it's fine. Now, one of the biggest problems I had with my BravaJet M6 is that it just didn't want to get over these dividers, even with the threshold feature enabled. And so it was kind of useless for anything except one-room mopping. Whereas this thing does really well at getting over dividers, even like the bigger ones that I have. Alright, so on to the tests. This is my usual mix of different types of debris, a little bit of flour, oregano, oatmeal, dog hair. Now, as you can see, this thing does not kick dirt out behind it. The Z10, which I tested, did very well on everything except some types of debris. It spat out behind it. I've slowed it down and you could see there's nothing coming out behind it. The side brush does kick things around a little bit, but other than that, this is a fantastic floor cleaner. It's actually the best floor cleaner I've tested, right up there with the Roborock S6 Max V, they're about the same in terms of results. So why is this better than the Z10 Pro? It uses the same suction motor, the same power, it uses the same, or close enough, it uses the same type of brush, just a little bit longer. So why doesn't it spit things out behind it? So before we try to answer that question, let's look at the results. This little thing is my fault, so ignore that. As you can see, it picked up pretty much everything. It did, kick a couple of pieces around with the side brush, and it left some debris on the perimeter because the Dreame robots don't do a second perimeter pass if you set it to clean 2 times. Okay, so here's the brush housing of the W10 versus the Z10, and as you can see, there's absolutely no contact with the floor in the Z10 at all, and there's the tiniest bit of contact with the W10. So this isn't necessarily the reason why it's a little bit better on hard floors, but it could be. So Dreame could remedy this in a bunch of ways. One of them would be like a brush with longer bristles. So here's the carpet cleaning test, and on carpets it's fantastic. It's just as good as the Z10, which means it's one of the best carpet cleaning robots that I've ever tested. Again, I can only test surface cleaning for now, so I don't know about its deep cleaning capabilities. You might want to turn to Vacuum Wars for that, if they reviewed this robot. So yeah, fantastic job. Pretty much left nothing behind. Or at least, nothing more than my best floor cleaners did. Okay, so the wet mopping, I was a little bit concerned, and this is my usual thing from my Ultimate Mopping Challenge, where I tested the T10, Narwhal T10, the BravoJet M6, and the iLife W450. Here, the reason I was concerned is because it's passing with its vacuum over the wet stuff before it gets to the mop. Now, you can turn the vacuum off in the app, which I did, because I don't want to suck up, wet wine and milk into the dustbin. That'll make a big mess. But still, I was concerned because the wheels pass over it, the little front caster wheel passes over it, the brush housing passes over it. So as soon as it's done here, we're going to grab it, and then we're going to see what actually happened to it, and then we'll look at the results after they dry. Okay, so here, I got it. And yeah, there is a little bit of wine, but for some reason these wheels aren't sticky at all. The front caster wheel is a little sticky, and so is the housing, the brush housing, but nothing too bad. Like a casual wipe would take care of it. So as far as the results, this is very surprising to me because this picked up pretty much all of the milk and wine. There's almost no stickiness at all. Like, I would call this done. I wouldn't even steam mop this afterwards. And the other thing is the butter. It pretty much didn't do anything to it. It didn't touch it at all, almost, which is the opposite of what the Narwhal T10 did. The Narwhal picked up all of the butter, but left a lot of the milk and wine behind, to the point where I could feel it, was sticky to the touch, and I smeared it, and you could see big smear marks on the floor. So about the only difference I could think of is maybe the brushes are, the mopping pads are made of a different material, perhaps? I don't know. I can't really think of why it would do this. So better on most things, worse on some, as far as wet mopping goes. Now, dry mopping was also a very interesting test. This is my usual coffee, dried wine, and dried road salt. Now, this is the same amount as in my ultimate mopping test, but I put it in smaller splatter so that it would dry faster. And again, the results surprised me, but we'll get to that as soon as we're done watching it clean. Now, the Dreame W10 does have clean zones, unlike the Narwhal, and I checked with my friend who lent me his for the review, and he says they still don't have it. Now, maybe he didn't update the app, or maybe they didn't add it, but not having clean zones is a big, big oversight. Also, the way this thing makes alternating passes is a little bit different, so that might account at least partly why it did a better job. Now, the Narwhal in my review did 2.5 passes, 2 wet passes and 1 where the mopping pads were kind of dry. So I interrupted this one before I let it go back to the dock. And as you can see, it's not laying down nearly as much water as the first couple of passes, so its mopping pads are kind of dry. So let's see how it did. And this surprised the heck out of me. It was really, really good job. I mean, look at it. There's nothing there. Nothing there. It picked up everything. Now, would the narwhal have done this if it had gone back and forth in alternating patterns, like lengthwise one time and then widthwise the other time? I don't know, maybe. Or maybe the mopping pad material is different enough that it can do this. But this is a fantastic job. This is as good or better a mop than the Bravojet M6. Now, I put navigation and chair legs into the same category because this has the same navigation algorithm as the Z10. So if you want to see how it did on my navigation challenge, you can just go watch the Z10 review. The only difference is how does its D shape affect its ability to get between stuff, and really it doesn't, which is the interesting thing. I don't know if it's because they programmed the algorithm well or because it's narrower than most D-shaped robots. I have no idea, but it does get around chair legs and other obstacles very well. So let's take a look at the app. Now this uses the same app as the Z10 Pro. Although the robot does generate its own map, it doesn't share maps. The map have the same limitations, so in this case that's not a toilet paper room, that's a hallway, but they don't have a label for corridor or hallway. Here's where you set the modes such as vacuuming and mopping, just mopping or just vacuuming. To do just vacuuming you have to remove the mopping pads. Now I don't know what humidity of mop pad is, whether that's how much water it leaves with or how dry it gets it, so I just leave it on the highest, which works for both. If you set it to room or zone cleaning, it lets you tell it how many passes to make, 1 or 2. Unfortunately, you can't do that in scheduling. Now, you can also specify how often the thing returns to the docking station to get more water and clean its pads. I have it at the minimum so that it does the best job possible. You know, standard settings, carpet recognition, carpet boost, carpet detection rather. Scheduling, it works the same as it does in most apps. So I have this thing cleaning my whole house or almost entire floor plan 3 times a week, and then just the kitchen and a couple of other rooms twice a week. It keeps track of its cleaning history very well. Like the Z10 Pro, it has never failed to do any of its jobs. It always just works. If it didn't do a job, it's because there's not enough clean water, or I didn't empty the dirty water, or so on and so forth. Now you can restore maps if it screws it up. This was one of those robots that uses unlocked maps, meaning it changes them as it goes, so that's a useful feature. It can, I guess, over time screw up the map, although that hasn't happened yet. So that's the app. It's a good app. It's not the best app, but it has really almost no bugs, at least that I could detect, so I'll take it. So whether you're looking for a dedicated mop like I was, or if you want one robot that does both vacuuming and mopping, this is pretty much the best thing on the market right now. It mops as well as anything I've ever tested, its navigation and mapping are excellent, and it can vacuum at the same time as it mops. So thank you for watching. Until next time, I'm Mike, and this is Mr. Rumbato.